So you both have done a lot of research in both the patient and physician experience. What would you say you learned so far?
Yeah, we've sure been busy, right, Richard? Like I spent the better half of a year and a half on really focusing in on what makes a great patient experience, especially with support programs that pharmaceutical companies can provide. And it resulted in a book, Pharma Customer Experience, which I recommend everybody pick up and read. And you read that and start thinking about how do we do the same for physicians, correct?
Yeah, absolutely. The pharmaceutical scene is obviously a complicated one. I guess I'd like to share the two big things that I've learned in the couple of months that I've spent applying my expertise to the customer experience area. Thing number one is that there's a fascinating interplay, a dance, if you will, between the need hierarchies of the patient and of the physician, and we'll be talking about that today. I think the other major thing that I've learned, which is a tremendous challenge, but also a tremendous opportunity, is just how much these programs are ignored by pharmaceutical companies as a tremendous marketing activity. They're sort of as an, oh, by the way, in many pharmaceutical companies. They're not positioned, they're not promoted, as we'll talk about. There is a tremendous opportunity as we move into a world of omni-channel marketing to give these programs their due, because when you talk to doctors about their engagements with pharmaceutical companies, the first thing you hear about, the part of the pharmaceutical company that touches them the most, is not the representative, really. It's not the medical science liaison. It is the kinds of programs that we're going to be talking about today.
Yeah, and as you said, Richard, when you think about the pharmaceutical industry, it is a complex kind of value chain, right? So it's not obvious necessarily who the customer is. You have some people talking about it being the patient, others saying it's the HCP or physician, others say you have to throw the caregiver in there. And it makes it like there's great opportunities to create experiences that are excellent for all of them, but there's lots of work to be done also. And, not to mention the regulatory challenges that pharma has. I wonder if you could just comment on, thinking about how the pharmaceutical industry works in general. And you have a couple good analogies around how the pharmaceutical industry is a little different from others with regard to kind of their customer makeup.
Yeah, when I teach this to graduate students at Temple University, this being medical decision making, what I tell them is that the pharmaceutical industry, where the industry touches physicians and patients, it's sort of like it's called a directed consumer good. It's like a college textbook. If you think about it, it's the college student who has to go out and shell out what now $250 for a textbook, but that's not the only customer. The professor who is not paying a dime for the textbook winds up being the one that's picking the textbook. So you have to dazzle both of them, if you will, in order to make a sale originally and to build up textbook loyalty. Same thing with drugs, as we'll see. The concept of loyalty is obviously very clouded in the pharmaceutical industry because doctors very rightfully are going to be prescribing the right drugs for their patients. So anytime we start to converse with doctors or try to converse with doctors about customer loyalty, you get nowhere, because they really can't be company loyal. They can be impressed by programs that we're going to be talking about, but loyalty is not a good word to be using in this context. One of the things that makes it complex. We've got a lot of work to do. We're not touching on nurse practitioners today, or physician assistants, or insurers, or pharmacy benefit managers. A lot of work to be done, but just getting the physician-patient interface correct is, we think, a big piece of the puzzle.
I really like that analogy, because when you think about it, if the professor is the doctor and the student is the patient in that analogy, the professor is also very concerned, or at least the good ones are concerned, about how much the student learns and how much they progress over the semester, and what kind of impact they had on that student, as does what we'll talk about in a second. The best physicians are the ones who have the patient's needs front and center. And that's how, these support programs that we're going to be talking about have a major impact on the experience of both the physician and the patient.
Yeah, I think the analogy is a good one, which is why I constantly use it, but it's a little simple-minded after all is said and done. There are many more steps involved in the, it's a much more long-term kind of situation when we're talking about the doctor and the patient. It's not just buy the textbook, yes, no. It is prescribe the drug, get the drug, pay for the drug, et cetera, as we'll be talking about. So it is probably, I'm taking a look at a lot of the work that PeopleMetrics has done, obviously, in other industries. And this is certainly one of the most complex, I think, in terms of the interplay of all the different people, of all the different factors that are playing a role here. You got the doctor, the patient, a lot of things to take into consideration.
The thing that I think about all the time, and I do say that, right? Like, this is complex, this is hard. There's a lot of variables that pharmaceutical companies have to deal with to create great experiences that other industries don't have to worry about. But at the same time, the rewards are so much higher stakes, right? So the impact you can have to create experiences that are seamless, easy, frictionless in a pharmaceutical patient-doctor relationship, the impact of that could be better quality of life, and in some cases, life or death. So it's very different than, say, speeding up a hotel checkout line and making that experience better, or making an app on your phone. Alexandra's, she's does a lot of work for us in marketing and other things, and she's on apps, right? And I'm sure some of them frustrate you, Alexandra, and others are great. But it's not like it's gonna really impact the quality of your life or your health.
Yes, for sure.
Well, as you talk about, I think very well in pharma customer experience, you've got literally a life and death situation, as you pointed out. I think in two key ways. First of all, at the patient level, if a patient is having a bad experience, she might not onboard to the product satisfactorily. She might not remain on the product, on the treatment more generally. So that's a life and death situation. At the corporate level, you write extensively, as well you should, about the clinical trials and how a series of patients having bad experiences, bad customer experiences with trying to onboard into a clinical trial or try to comply with a clinical trial can really slow down a trial at mega costs, if you will, on a day-to-day basis.
Especially, I don't want to get too much into this, but the recruiting is so hard for clinical trials, especially for diverse and underserved populations, when those people don't have an experience that is at the level they need to, and they drop out of trial, or they tell their friends or family that there was a poor experience. That really hurts the trial, and frankly, it hurts the others in the future who might get that drug if it passes FDA approval. So it's just a really high stakes game we're playing here. It's not a game. It's something else. It's a process that we really need to focus on.
Yeah, so absolutely. I'm co-chair of Volunteers in Medicine Clinic down here on Hilton Head Island. We've got 10,000 underserved patients that you're talking about, many of whom come to our clinic on bicycles because they don't have a car. So to get them to participate regularly and on a long-term basis in a clinical trial is a real challenge. Sean, why don't you take us through, I think, one of the best pieces of work that we've done so far, the patient needs hierarchy.
Sure.
For that.
Right. Alexandra, thanks for putting that up. So we're going to talk about the bridge between patient and physician CX, but first we're going to talk about this concept of hierarchies. And we've gone through this before in PeopleMetrics Live, and it's in my book, Pharma Customer Experience. But it's worth going through again, because we have one that we're introducing for the first time around the physician hierarchy of needs too today, which is exciting. So the patient hierarchy of needs is around a Maslow framework. And what this means is, if everybody's familiar with Maslow's hierarchy of needs, certain needs need to be fulfilled at the bottom of the pyramid before the next need becomes relevant, right? So in Maslow, it's things like physiological needs, like shelter and having a house and food. And the next, you're not really worried about, say, having friends if you don't have shelter or food. So friends and socialization is another level above. So just to give you an example, kind of how this is working. So for patients, this is what we found, and we've talked to thousands and thousands of patients who are onboarding onto new medication, and here are the needs that they really need fulfilled especially by patient support teams and pharmaceutical companies. One, they need financial security, meaning they can say to themselves, I can afford this. And we know this is where a lot of pharmaceutical companies' focus has been in terms of patient assistance programs, copay assistance cards. There's all sorts of programs that fit into this bucket. And for good reason, because without it, none of the ones above it really matter. But once you get through the financial security, it's okay, how do I get this medication and can I get it in a reasonable time frame? Meaning, you know, it's logistical support. I need to get the medication that I got prescribed from the physician, and especially for rare disease products where you have to maybe go to an infusion center. There's a lot that pharmaceutical companies can do to make this a less frictionful experience. Make it easy to get the medication they need. Also, for specialty products, medical administration is key. So whether they're doing injections or infusions at home or at a center, they have to know how to administer the medication, or they're simply not going to onboard and they're not going to comply with medication. So that's the next level. And finally, support systems are things that pharmaceutical companies have been doing more and more of, spinning up hubs, internal, external, case managers to be around to support them however they can, through patient ambassadors, all sorts of different programs, helps patients in terms of supporting this process they're going through, and that's onboarding onto a new medication. And the top of the pyramid in Maslow, this was self-actualization, which Richard and Alexandra, I'm still trying to reach personally, but I don't think I've gotten there yet, the self-actualization part of Maslow, but I work on that. It's confidence, meaning I feel confident, meaning I, the patient, that I'm ready and I'm prepared for treatment. And it means that I've checked all of these need boxes and I'm ready to go. And Richard, I think I've told you this before, in the data that we've seen, when the patients feel satisfied with the support they get in terms of these patient support programs and patient assistance programs, almost not all of them are confident and ready to onboard. But when they're not satisfied, a third of them, a full third, say that they're not confident and ready to onboard. And you know the implications that has both for the pharmaceutical industry's financials as well as the medical outcomes of that patient. So that's the patient hierarchy of needs.
Good deal. And now the challenge becomes, as we entered into the PeopleMetrics world, what's the parallel, if any, in the physician world? By the way, Sean, I'm substantially older than you are, so I'm not trying to reach self-actualization. I'm trying to reach nirvana, but that's a topic for conversation on another day. Sean and I have been working on building this physician hierarchy of needs, and it turns out to be a very interesting one in terms of the realizations that it's brought me to. I've only been doing this for 45 years, and I've had a bunch of aha experiences when I started to look at the world that thought I knew so well through the lens of customer experience or CX. At the basis of the physician hierarchy of needs is obviously therapeutic knowledge, treatment knowledge. The doctor needs to know about the disease entity. He needs to have updates of the disease entity. He needs to know about the products. Here's the scary part that I've learned by having very open-ended, and that's what I do for a living. I have open-ended conversations, open mic conversations with physicians. I don't do interviews. I hate topical guides. I have conversations with doctors, and what I hear when I listen to doctors talk about their information needs, if you will, is basically they tell me, I know the drugs. I know the disease. I'm a specialist. We're talking about specialty products here. Please help me help my patients. The therapeutic knowledge is the base. We need that, but that turns out to be the easy part. And it's interesting to listen to doctors beat us up in these conversations in terms of the amount of time that the industry wastes keeping them focused on therapeutic knowledge.
So Richard, quick question. I mean, you've talked to so many physicians over the years, and what is your opinion on how they can best deliver this therapeutic knowledge to physicians? Like, how do physicians want to receive that these days, and what are they doing what are they wasting time on from what you're hearing from physicians that don't contribute to this bucket from, say, a pharmaceutical sales rep perspective?
The easiest thing to do there is to tell you what not to do in order to generate good, positive customer satisfaction. And doctor after doctor has told me the following: do not give me reminder details. I hate it when pharmaceutical sales representatives come in and tell me the same thing they told me the last time. It's a waste of time, and they're acting like I'm an idiot. I'm not an idiot. So thing number one to avoid is reminder details. The doctors are not looking to be reminded. I had a neurologist comment the other day as I was having a conversation related to this and some other presentations Sean and I are going to be doing. He said, "Why are they always beating me up with p-values? I really don't care. Tell me the pragmatics of how this is supposed to fit into my practice, how I can, again, help my patients. I don't care about p-values." Those are two things they shouldn't be doing. What the company should be doing is to get ready for omni-channel marketing. We're going to be moving into a world, and everybody's talking about this, so this is certainly not a new idea. We're going to be moving into a world increasingly that is going to be digitally based as opposed to just personally based. There will still be pharmaceutical sales representatives involved in some circumstances, but probably to a much lesser extent than they've been historically. We're going to be looking at the digital media and their role, and we're going to be going from push, having the doctor sort of pinned up against the wall and promoting to them. We're going to be going from that kind of set of circumstances to a pull set of circumstances where the doctors are going to be out seeking information. We have to get ready for that. That's a different world. It's not about developing the message for the product and going out and mumbling it for the next year, as one of my colleagues who used to be a pharmaceutical representative said. It used to be a show up and throw up kind of world. Now it's going to be much more complicated. We've got to have, within regulatory constraints, doctors pulling the right information to meet their needs. I think about a lot of that is going to be about the programs that we're talking about today. So we've got this base of therapeutic knowledge. On top of that is seamless therapy. They're able to, the patients need to be, from a doctor's perspective, able to seamlessly access assistance programs so that they can afford the prescribed therapy. Notice that afford notion, just in Sean's hierarchy, was a key factor. It's certainly a key factor here. If the doctor prescribes it, does a wonderful differential diagnosis, prescribes a product and the patient can't get her hands on it, nothing has really been accomplished. And the word seamlessly there, a lot of talk has been heard from physicians about friction. Sean used the term friction, and we've got to eliminate friction for the doctors in getting the patients into these programs. Friction comes in terms of paperwork to be filled out, financial needs documentation that have to be wrestled from the patient frequently because they don't want to provide that information. Friction comes in terms of delays. We've heard many stories of patients wandering off, coming back for a follow-up visit 3 months later, not having gotten the drug because they hadn't been enrolled in the program satisfactorily. There are all kinds of friction points that are involved in getting the therapy into the patient's hands. A successful product launch, any successful product marketing is going to involve eliminating that friction, making sure that the patients can get their medication. That's important to the patient and doctor alike.
I mean, we've heard that, Richard, is they don't just want the patients to be able to get access to these patient assistance programs. They want it to be easy for the patient to do so. So they don't show up at their office 3 months from now without the medication and therapy.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there are a lot of different terms, and I think all of our clients need to get in touch with these specific physician terms, which is why I love the open mic kind of approach to listening to doctors. One of the terms that I hear used is foolproof. Doctors really hate when a program is here today and gone tomorrow, or the rules change, or anything of that nature. That has to be eliminated or at least reduced if the hierarchy of needs is going to be met. Next level up beyond the seamless access to the products is easy onboarding. Onboarding of the patients consists of really two steps. First of all, getting the medication in the hands of the patient. Second of all, getting them to understand the product, its efficacy, managing the side effects expectations of the patient, and getting the patient started on the therapy. Certainly, obviously much more complicated with the kind of specialty products that we're emphasizing right now in our work. So onboarding is a key. That's a key starting point. The next level is my patients are able to achieve their medical outcomes by staying on therapy. It's a sort of a judgmental term, but compliance winds up being important here. Patients need to be encouraged, monitored without looking like they're being too carefully monitored, but to make sure that they stay on their medications. Many of these medications carry with them difficult administration schedules, and it is a challenge to make sure from a doctor's perspective that the patients remain on the medication. Anything a pharmaceutical company can do to take care of all of the steps. They're doing a pretty good job in terms of the therapeutic knowledge step, but anything that they can do to help doctors with these steps above the therapeutic knowledge to help make this Let's call it seamless. Let's call it frictionless. Let's call it foolproof. Would be greatly appreciated. It's fascinating because, again, when we talk to doctors about their engagements with pharmaceutical companies, this is the part of the pharmaceutical company that touches the doctor most closely. It is the thing that they pay attention to. When I ask doctors, what company does a great job for your specialty? They talk about companies who are doing a great job in meeting their programmatic needs as we're outlining them here today. The last step in this process is really freedom. Freedom is another word for nothing left to lose, but in this particular case, freedom is another term for being free to serve my patients to the best of my ability. What that means is we need in this hierarchy to understand that the pinnacle here, this is a really important pinnacle because it is a situation which in many doctors' hands is absent right now, just like self-actualization or nirvana. The doctors are having a hard time getting the freedom of time to deliver care to their patients. Why? So much paperwork is involved in these programs and elsewhere. I've written rather extensively. You can sort of Google search this on the concept of physician burnout, nigh on the physician suicide. There are doctors out there who are having real problems because companies and the institutions in which they work are not meeting these needs seamlessly, effortlessly. The doctors are looking for some relief here. Anything the companies can do to bring that relief is very positively perceived. Anything that they do to pile on additional labor, additional considerations, the doctors really take umbrage at, and understandably so.
Right. So the question is, how do we bridge these two? Right. So that's the question. And the bridge that we see most often from physicians themselves are these patient support services that pharmaceutical companies can provide and do provide very often. So let's just take a quick look at how this works for these two different hierarchies. So on the left, again, is the patient hierarchy. On the right is the physician hierarchy. And the first piece of the puzzle, the first bridge, are patient assistance programs and copay cards that allow patients to enjoy financial security and allow physicians to enable their patients to have seamless and affordable therapy. So it's in the toolbox, it's fulfilling both those needs. This is a great example, I think, of a patient support services bridge between the two.
And by the way, Sean, if I could jump in there in terms of salience,
Sure.
when I talk with doctors about programs, and I approach it like I approach everything from a very open-ended perspective, the line that Sean is talking about right there is the key line that doctors want to talk about. And patient support services come in two flavors. One is financial, which is what Sean is emphasizing there. That's the one that doctors want to talk about. That's at the base of both of these pyramids, as Sean has said. Patient support programs that provide the patient with information they've got sort of a love-hate relationship with. If a complicated product has a good case manager, as Sean has said, that the reviews are phenomenal, the success, the outcomes are great. But there is again a love-hate kind of relationship going on there because many of the physicians perceive many of these programs to be outbound programs to be redundant, providing information that the doctor's already provided in terms of the condition and the therapy. Phone calls at home, the patient receives at home, can be seen as intrusive. So again, if you look at push versus pull, this is of lower salience than the dollars and cents part that we've been talking about. It's also a great situation for pull resources so patients can get their questions answered, keeping the doctor in the loop. Doctors have complained that they get out of the loop, if you will, when patients are being provided with information by hubs and by other sources. But these kinds of programs can be very supportive or not, depending upon their application.
Excellent. Great points. The next one, we can see the bridge. Another piece to patient support services is patients need logistical support. Physicians want easy onboarding for their patients, especially for specialty products, giving them transportation, assistance to, whether it's infusion centers or wherever, to help them, get the drug, get on the therapy. It's a huge piece to it. The next one is also related to it, medical administration. where, if you have nurse liaisons and hubs helping the patients understand how to, take this medicine, what are the different ways to travel with the medicine, making sure they can stay compliant on it once they onboard. And the support systems, the next one, Alexandra, also focuses on easy onboarding. These are hubs and case managers, as Richard just spoke about, and the varying websites that patients and physicians are able to access, all to help them understand everything about, this new therapy they're about to go on. And that's, the reason why pharmaceutical companies are investing so much in these internal and external hubs. The final level to it, though, is confidence, and that will help with ongoing adherence and the success of these patients. So these are patient ambassadors that get put together to talk to new patients to make sure that they understand, the importance of taking the product and taking the therapy regularly. And then, of course, the hubs are always available for ongoing support. If anybody has any questions, as most of these are chronic diseases, right, Richard? They need to be taking these products over and over again, sometimes for the rest of their lives. And it's something that many will need support over time. And the other thing that I would point out is these three pieces of the hierarchy of physician needs, the affordable therapy, the easy onboarding, and the success of the patient and adherence, they're all reducing the burden in some way of a very, very busy physician these days, right? So anything that pharmaceutical companies can do to help in a helpful way reduce the burden of the physician in serving patients in things that they can ask pharmaceutical companies and hubs, it's appreciated. The trick is they just want to be in the loop on what was said, right? So there's that little caveat there, but there's great opportunity here to make both the physician's experience much better, as well as the patient's experience much better, using known pieces of patient support services toolbox that they're using every day. So I hope the audience thinks about this and maybe thinks about this in a different way on how they're helping both the pharma's customers using these services.
Just an important final caveat that I'd like to add to your caveat there, Sean, and that is the companies have to be very careful how they present these programs, not to be too full of themselves. Doctors do report an irony in prices of thousands of dollars a month, and then programs designed to guarantee minimal copays. That strikes them as a peculiar balance. They also note that we should not try to fool them. The programs are in place to help sell drugs for all intents and purposes. And several doctors have commented spontaneously to me that they really hate it when a pharmaceutical company holds themselves out to be the doctor's partner in treatment. You got to be very careful in your language there. As several doctors have said, you're not my partner, you're the pharmaceutical company. You've got a role to serve, but it's different from my role. So this needs to be done carefully if you're looking, as you should be, for positive customer experience.
All right, Alexandra, I think we're at two.
Yes, let's fit in one question though. The patient hierarchy of needs presented, to what extent does it vary between and within countries? For example, in many European countries, medicines are paid for by the state, so that level would not apply, I'm assuming the financial level.
I mean, it's a great question. I think it varies both by country and by type of product, right? So that's a very fair comment. Some of these levels may not apply to certain products, like for ones that aren't a complex biologic, maybe you're not injecting it. So administration isn't as big of a deal, right, Richard? Or a country that pays for the drug, then that financial security one isn't as relevant, or it's just satisfied in a different way. It's still there, but it's being delivered so that you can move up the hierarchy of needs more immediately than we would in the US. What do you think of that question, Richard? Anything you'd add?
Yeah, I think that's absolutely correct. I'm sitting here thinking that we've got some good Canadian friends who come down to South Carolina for the winter, and they're sort of amused by the Volunteers in Medicine clinic where we serve 10,000 underserved patients, because they point out in their country there is no such thing as an underserved patient, so there is no need for the overall delivery of medical care, let alone for the price of the medication. So wonderful question. What we've talked about today has been primarily a U.S. phenomenon, varies by specialty, by disease, and certainly by country as well, country and culture as well.
And the idea of these frameworks is to help you think about how you're delivering experiences to your customers, patients, and HCPs. And they will be adjusted for each country and each therapeutic area, but we hope it's helpful in just helping you frame the problem.
Great. Well, thank you both for sharing your expertise today. This has been a wonderful session. And thank you all for viewing. We'll see you next time on PeopleMetrics Live. Take care, all.
Thanks for your time, folks.
Thank you.